In the 13th century, the Muslim world was a beacon of culture, knowledge, and thriving cities. But an unstoppable force was approaching from the east, the Mongols. Led by the fierce and relentless Genghis Khan, they would bring devastation on a scale never seen before. In this video, we'll take you through the violent and catastrophic Mongol conquests, focusing on their invasion of the Muslim world. The Mongols were a nomadic people from the steppes of Central Asia, whose rise to power began under the leadership of one man Temujin, known as Genghis Khan. Known for their fierce military tactics and unrelenting expansion, the Mongol army swiftly became one of the most feared forces on earth. Genghis Khan united the Mongol tribes, building an empire that stretched across Asia. The Mongols' ambitions were boundless, fueled by their desire to expand their empire across vast territories. Under the leadership of Genghis Khan, they had already established dominance across much of Central Asia, subduing various nomadic tribes and smaller kingdoms. Their military campaigns were characterized by unparalleled speed, discipline, and a strategy of overwhelming force. By the early 13th century, their empire stretched from the steppes of Mongolia to the borders of the Khwarazm Empire, a powerful and prosperous Muslim state located in what is now modern-day Iran, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. At this point, the Khwarazm Empire was ruled by Shah Ala ad-Din Muhammad, who had established himself as a key player in the Islamic world. The Khwarazm Empire was rich, strategically located along the Silk Road, and it boasted a strong military presence. Despite its strength, it was no match for the rising power of the Mongols, who were now eyeing expansion into the Muslim world. Genghis Khan, who preferred diplomacy before initiating conflict, saw a potential opportunity for trade and peaceful relations with the Khwarazm Empire. In 1218, Genghis Khan sent a caravan of 400 men with valuable goods as a gesture of goodwill, hoping to establish trade and peaceful relations with the Shah of Khwarazm. However, this diplomatic move was met with treachery. The governor of the Khwarezmian city of Otrar, under the suspicion that the Mongols were spies, seized the caravan and had its members arrested and executed. When Genghis Khan learned of the incident, he sent 3 ambassadors to the Shah to resolve the matter peacefully. However, the Shah, either out of arrogance or a grave misjudgment of the Mongol threat, ordered the execution of one ambassador and humiliated the others by shaving their heads before sending them back. This act of betrayal was not just an affront to Mongol diplomacy, but a personal insult to Genghis Khan himself. In Mongol culture, diplomacy and respect for emissaries were sacred, and the Shah's actions were a grave violation of those norms. The massacre of the trade caravan and the humiliation of the Mongol envoys enraged Genghis Khan, igniting a fury that would bring catastrophic consequences to the Muslim world. Genghis Khan's retaliation was swift and brutal. In 1219, he mobilized his entire military force, estimated to be around 200,000 strong, and launched a full-scale invasion of the Khwarazm Empire. The Mongol army, renowned for its mobility and psychological warfare, descended upon the empire. Over the course of 2 years, the Mongols destroyed many of the great cities in the Khwarezmian Empire, razing them to the ground. Samarkand, Bukhara, and Nishapur, some of the most prosperous cities of the Islamic world, were reduced to ruins. The Mongols slaughtered entire populations, sparing only a few craftsmen and artisans whom they enslaved. The Shah, who had initially believed his empire could withstand the Mongol onslaught, was forced to flee from city to city as his realm crumbled around him. He eventually escaped to an island in the Caspian Sea, where he died in disgrace, abandoned by his allies and followers. The Khwarazm Empire, once a thriving Muslim state, was left in smoldering ruins, and the Mongol conquest had only just begun. This was not just a defeat, it was an annihilation. The Mongol devastation of Khwarazm set a terrifying precedent, one that sent shockwaves throughout the Muslim world. The Muslim world, already fragmented and weakened by internal strife, now faced an existential threat unlike any they had encountered before. The fall of the Khwarazm Empire in the early 1220s marked just the beginning of the Mongols' devastation of the Muslim world. After Genghis Khan's triumph over Khwarazm, his empire continued its relentless expansion, leaving a path of destruction across the Middle East, Persia, and Central Asia. Genghis Khan himself died in 1227, shortly after the conquest of the Tangut Empire in China. His death, however, did not slow the momentum of the Mongol war machine. After Genghis Khan's death, his third son, Ogedei Khan, ascended to the position of Great Khan, becoming the ruler of the entire Mongol Empire. Under Ogedei's leadership, the Mongols continued their westward push. His reign saw the Mongols conquer vast territories in Russia, Eastern Europe, and the Middle East. The capture of cities like Moscow, Kiev, and Baghdad's northern neighbors contributed to their growing fearsome reputation. But perhaps the most crucial victory was the defeat of the Seljuks at the Battle of Kosadah in 1243, which opened the gates to the weakening Islamic states of the Middle East. Ogedei's death in 1241 briefly halted the Mongol advance as the empire paused to determine the next great Khan. This period of uncertainty was followed by the rise of Genghis Khan's grandson, Mongol Khan, who resumed the Mongols' conquests. One of Mongol's primary goals was the complete destruction of the Islamic world. He tasked his brother, Hulagu Khan, with achieving this objective. It was during Hulagu's campaigns that the Mongols turned their gaze towards the heart of the Muslim world, Baghdad. Once the dazzling capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, stood as a beacon of culture, learning, and wealth. It was the center of the Islamic Golden Age, a city where scholars, philosophers, and scientists gathered to gain knowledge in fields such as astronomy, medicine, and mathematics. Its libraries, especially the famed House of Wisdom, held countless manuscripts that preserved the knowledge of ancient civilizations and the intellectual achievements of the Islamic world. But by the mid-13th century, this grand city was in decline. The Abbasid Caliphate had weakened, unable to control its territories or defend its borders effectively. This made it an appealing target for the Mongols, who now saw Baghdad as the last major obstacle in their path to total domination of the Middle East. In 1258, Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, led a massive Mongol army toward the heart of the Islamic world, Baghdad. His mission was clear: to wipe the city off the map. Despite receiving word of the Mongol advance, Caliph al-Mustasim, the ruler of the Abbasid Caliphate, was unprepared for the impending catastrophe. Baghdad, once the jewel of Islamic civilization, had seen its influence decline, but al-Mustasim believed the city's historical prestige and former glory could shield it from the Mongol threat. The Caliph made the grave mistake of underestimating the ruthless nature of the Mongols. Believing he could rely on diplomacy or the walls of Baghdad, al-Mustasim hesitated. Hulagu's forces, however, had no interest in negotiation. The Mongols followed a brutal code. Cities were given one opportunity to surrender, and if that chance was refused, there would be no mercy. When the Mongols arrived, al-Mustasim initially refused to submit to their demands for unconditional surrender. He assumed that Baghdad's cultural and spiritual significance might convince Hulagu to offer more lenient terms. Confident in his position, the Caliph sent emissaries to Hulagu's camp to negotiate, hoping for a peaceful resolution. But Hulagu Khan had his orders. Baghdad was to be destroyed, and the Abbasid Caliphate was to be eliminated. When al-Mustasim's emissaries arrived, they were met with a stern response. The Mongols demanded complete submission, no negotiation, no concessions. Al-Mustasim, now aware of the Mongols' iron will, attempted to reverse his earlier refusal. He sent more envoys, this time offering to surrender under his own conditions. But it was too late. The Mongols were not known for giving second chances. Al-Mustasim's hesitation had sealed Baghdad's fate. Hulagu Khan ordered his army to advance, and the siege of Baghdad began, a siege that would end in one of the darkest chapters of Islamic history. The siege began in January 1258. For nearly 2 weeks, Hulagu's forces bombarded the city with their deadly trebuchets, battering its walls and cutting off any means of escape. The once great city, known for its bustling markets and scholarly atmosphere, was soon reduced to chaos and fear. On February 10th, the Mongols breached Baghdad's defenses. What followed was a massacre of unimaginable proportions. The Mongols stormed through the streets, killing everyone in their path: soldiers, civilians, men, women, and children. The Tigris River, which once nourished the city's thriving civilization, ran red with blood. Estimates of the death toll vary, but most historians agree that between 200,000 and 1 million people were slaughtered during the sack of Baghdad. Perhaps the greatest loss was not just the human toll, but the destruction of Baghdad's cultural heritage. The House of Wisdom, once the greatest library in the world, was set ablaze. The books and manuscripts that had safeguarded centuries of knowledge were thrown into the Tigris. Legend has it that the river ran black with ink for days, as the accumulated wisdom of the Islamic world was lost forever in the waters. Scientific treatises, medical texts, and philosophical works that could have advanced humanity were reduced to ashes and ruins. Caliph al-Mustasim, the last Abbasid ruler, was captured and executed by the Mongols. His death symbolized the end of the Abbasid Caliphate, a dynasty that had once united much of the Muslim world and presided over its golden age. With Baghdad's fall, the Islamic world was left in disarray. The Mongols had dealt not just a military defeat, but a blow to the heart of Islamic civilization. The sack of Baghdad in 1258 was only the beginning of the Mongol advance into the Muslim world. After the fall of the Abbasid Caliphate, Hulagu Khan's forces continued to press forward, expanding their conquests into the broader Middle East. The Mongols pushed into Syria, where they encountered the remnants of Muslim resistance, but they would soon face a challenge that altered the course of their expansion: the Mamluks of Egypt. In 1260, Hulagu's forces marched toward Egypt, threatening the heart of the Muslim world. However, their advance was halted at the famous Battle of Ain Jalut, where the Mamluks, under the leadership of Sultan Qutuz and the brilliant General Baybars, achieved a decisive victory. This battle marked the first significant defeat of the Mongols and prevented further Mongol expansion into North Africa. While the Mamluks had saved Egypt and Syria, the Mongols still held vast territories in Persia and Anatolia. Their influence extended into the Seljuk Sultanate of Rum, where they forced local rulers to become vassals of the Mongol Empire. Anatolia, once a prosperous region under the Seljuks, experienced economic decline and political instability as a result of Mongol dominance. The Middle East, from Anatolia to Persia, was left fractured and weakened by decades of Mongol invasions. The once thriving cities and trade routes were left in ruins, with the Muslim world struggling to maintain its former unity. The Mongols' expansion into the region changed the balance of power, leaving the Middle East divided between Mongol-controlled territories and the resurgent Mamluks to the west. The Mongol devastation of the Muslim world wasn't just a moment of military conquest. It was a cultural, intellectual, and economic catastrophe. The Mongols' campaigns from Persia to Anatolia and the destruction of cities like Baghdad forever altered the landscape of the Muslim world. Libraries were burned, irrigation systems destroyed, and entire populations wiped out, leaving scars that would take centuries to heal. While the Muslim world would eventually recover, the Mongol invasions left an indelible mark, forever changing the course of history. Join us in the next video, where we explore how the Islamic world responded to this devastation and how they began to rebuild. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. Till next time.